This chapter is brought to you by ASMR. Wow, ASMR, so cool. Wow. Okay, well, let's get right into it then. The shock of losing Mad Eye hung over the house in the days that followed. Harry kept expecting to see him stumping in through the back door like the other Order members who passed in and out to relay news. Harry felt that nothing but action would assuage his feelings of guilt and grief, and that he ought to set out on his mission to find and destroy Horcruxes as soon as possible. Well, you can't do anything about the Ron mouthed the word Horcruxes till you're 17. You've still got the trace on you, and we can plan here as well as anywhere, can't we? Or, he dropped his voice to a whisper, do you reckon you already know where the you-know-whats are? No, Harry admitted. I think Hermione's been doing a bit of research, said Ron. She said she was saving it for when you got here. They were sitting at the breakfast table. Mr. Weasley and Bill had just left for work. Mrs. Weasley had gone upstairs to wake Hermione and Ginny, while Fleur had drifted off to take a bath. The trace will break on the 31st, said Harry. That means I only need to stay here 4 days. Then I can... 5 days, Ron corrected him firmly. We've got to stay for the wedding. They'll kill us if we miss it. Harry understood. They, to mean Fleur and Mrs. Weasley. It's 1 extra day, said Ron. When Harry looked mutinous, don't they realize how important? Of course they don't, said Ron. They haven't got a clue, and now you mention it, I wanted to talk to you about that. Ron glanced toward the door into the hall to check that Mrs. Weasley was not returning yet, then leaned in closer to Harry. Mom's been trying to get it out of Hermione and me, what we're off to do. She'll try you next, so brace yourself. Dad and Lupin both have asked as well, but when we said Dumbledore told you not to tell anyone except us, they dropped it. Not Mom, though. She's determined. Ron's prediction came true within hours. Shortly before lunch, Mrs. Weasley detached Harry from the others by asking him to help identify a lone man's sock that she thought might have come out of his rucksack. Once she had him cornered in the tiny scullery of the kitchen, she started. Ron and Hermione seem to think that the 3 of you are dropping out of Hogwarts, she began in a light, casual tone. Oh, said Harry, well, yeah, we are. The mangled tunnel of its own accord in a corner, wringing out what looked like one of Mr. Weasley's vests. May I ask why you are abandoning your education? Said Mrs. Weasley. Well, Dumbledore left me. Stuff to do, mumbled Harry. Ron and Hermione know about it, and they want to come too. What sort of stuff? I'm sorry, I can't. Well, frankly, I think Arthur and I have a right to know, and I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Granger would agree, said Mrs. Weasley. Harry had been afraid of the concerned parent attack. He forced himself to look directly into her eyes, noticing as he did that so precisely the same shade of brown as Ginny's. This did not help. Dumbledore didn't want anyone else to know, Mrs. Weasley. I'm sorry, Ron and Hermione don't have to come. It's their choice. I don't see that you have to go either, she snapped, dropping all pretense now. You are barely of age, any of you. It's utter nonsense. If Dumbledore needed work doing, he had the whole order at his command. Harry, you must have misunderstood him. Probably he was telling you something he wanted done, and you took it to mean that he wanted you. I didn't misunderstand, said Harry flatly. It's got to be me. days of non-stop cutlery cleaning, of color-matching favors, ribbons, and flowers, of Dean gnoming the garden and helping Mrs. Weasley cook vast batches of canap. However, Harry started to suspect her of a different motive. All the jobs she handed out seemed to keep him, Ron and Hermione, away from each other. He had not a chance to speak up to the two of them alone since the first night, when he had told them about Voldemort torturing Ollivander. Wow, ASMR, wow, so cool, wow. I think Mom thinks that if she can stop the three of you getting together and planning, she'll be able to delay you leaving, Ginny told Harry in an undertone as they laid the table for dinner on the third night of his stay. And then what does she think is going to happen? Harry muttered. Someone else might kill off Voldemort while she's holding us here, making Paul offense. He had spoken without thinking and saw Ginny's face whiten. So it's true, she said. That's what you're going to do. I was joking, said Harry evasively. They stared at each other, and there was something more than shock in Ginny's expression. Suddenly, Harry became aware that this was the first time that he had been alone with her since those stolen hours in secluded corners of the Hogwarts grounds. He was sure she was remembering them too. Both of them jumped as the door opened, and Mr. Weasley, Kingsley, and Bill walked in. They were often joined by other Order members for dinner now, because the Burrow had replaced number 12, Grimmauld Place, as the headquarters. Mr. Weasley had explained that after the death of Dumbledore, their secret keeper, each of the people to whom Dumbledore had confided Grimmauld Place's location, had become a secret keeper in turn. And as there are around 20 of us, that greatly dilutes the power of the Fidelius charm. 20 times as many opportunities for the Death Eaters to get the secret out of somebody. We can't expect it to hold much longer. But surely Snape will have told the Death Eaters the address by now, asked Harry. Well, Mad Eye set up a couple of curses against Snape in case he turns up there again. We hope they'll be strong enough both to keep him out and to bind his tongue if he tries to talk about the place, but we can't be sure. It would have been insane to keep using the place as headquarters now that its protection has become so shaky. The kitchen was so crowded that evening it was difficult to maneuver knives and forks. Harry found himself crammed beside Ginny. The unsaid things that had just passed between them made him wish that they had been separated by a few more people. He was trying so hard to avoid brushing her arms he could barely cut his chicken. No news about Mad Eye? Harry asked Bill. Nothing, replied Bill. They had not been able to hold a funeral for Moody because Bill and Lupin had failed to recover his body. It had been difficult to know where he might have fallen, here in the darkness and the confusion of the battle. The Daily Prophet hasn't said a word about him dying or finding the body, Bill went on, but that doesn't mean much. It's keeping a lot quiet these days. And they still haven't called a hearing about all the underage magic I used escaping the Death Eaters. Harry called across the table to Mr. Weasley, who shook his head. Because they know I had no choice, or because they don't want me to tell the world Voldemort attacked me. The latter, I think. Scrimgeour doesn't want to admit that you know who is as powerful as he is, nor that Azkaban seemed a mass breakout. Yeah, why tell the public the truth? Said Harry, clenching his knife so tightly that the faint scars on the back of his right hand stood out, white against his skin. I must not tell lies. Isn't anyone at the ministry prepared to stand up to him? Asked Ron angrily. Of course, Ron, but people are terrified, Mr. Weasley replied. Terrified that they will be next to disappear, their children the next to be attacked. There are nasty rumors going around. I, for one, don't believe the Muggle Studies professor at Hogwarts resigned. She hasn't been seen for weeks now. Meanwhile, Scrimgeour remains shut up in his office all day. I just hope he's working on a plan. There was a pause in which Mrs. Weasley magicked the empty plates onto the work surface and set was everyone had pudding for the wedding, she added, when he looked confused. Of course, none of our guests are Death Eaters, but we cannot guarantee that they will not let something slip after they have had champagne. From this, Harry gathered that she still suspected Hagrid. Yes, good point, said Mrs. Weasley from the top of the table where she sat, spectacles perched on the end of her nose, scanning an immense list of jobs that she had scribbled on a very long piece of parchment. Now, Ron, have you cleaned out your room yet? Why, exclaimed Ron, slamming his spoon down and glaring at his mother. Why does my room have to be cleaned out? Harry and I are fine with the way it is. We are holding your brother's wedding here in a few days' time, young men, and they are getting married in my bedroom, asked Ron furiously. No! So why in the name of Merlin's saggy left? Don't talk to your mother like that, said Mr. Weasley firmly, and do as you're told. Ron scowled at both of his parents, then picked up his spoon and attacked the last few mouthfuls of his apple tart. I can help, some of it's my mess, said Harry told Ron, but Mrs. Weasley cut across him. No, Harry dear, I'd much rather you helped Arthur much out the chickens and Hermione. I'd be ever so grateful if you changed the sheets for Monsieur and Madame de Clare. You know they're arriving at 11 tomorrow morning. But as it turned out, there was very little to do for the chickens. There's no need to mention it to Molly, Mr. Weasley told Harry, blocking his access to the goop butter. Did Tonk sent me most of what was left of Sirius's bike and I'm hiding what that's to say, keeping it in here. Fantastic stuff. There's an exhaust gas in it, as I believe it's called. The most magnificent battery, and it'll be a great opportunity to find out how brakes work. I'm going to try and put it all back together again when when I've got time. When they returned to the house, Mrs. Weasley was nowhere to be seen, so Harry slipped upstairs to Ron's attic bedroom. I'm doing it. Oh, it's you, said Ron in relief, as Harry entered the room. Ron lay back down on the bed, which he had evidently just vacated. The room was just as messy as it had been all week. The only chance was that Hermione was sitting in the far corner, her fluffy ginger cat Crookshanks at her feet, sorting books, some of which Harry recognized as his own, into two enormous piles. Hi, Harry, she said, as he sat down on his camp bed. And how did you manage to get away? Oh, Ron's mom forgot that she asked Ginny and me to change the sheets yesterday, said Hermione. She threw numerology and grammatica into one pile, and the rise and fall of the dark arts onto the other. We were just talking about Mad-Eye, Ron told Harry. I reckon he might have survived. But Bill saw him hit by the killing curse, said Harry. Yeah, but Bill was under attack too. How can he be sure what he saw? Even if the killing curse missed, Mad-Eye still fell about 1,000 feet, said Hermione. Now wait. Quidditch teams of Britain and Ireland in her hand. He could have used the shield charm. Fleur said his wand was blasted out of his hand, said Harry. Well, all right, if you want him to be dead, said Ron grumpily, punching his pillow into a more comfortable shape. Of course we don't want him to be dead, said Hermione, looking shocked. It's dreadful that he's dead, but we're being realistic. For the first time, Harry imagined Mad-Eye's broken body as Dumbledore's had been, yet with that one eye still whizzing in its socket. He felt a stab of revulsion mixed with a bizarre desire to laugh. The Death Eaters probably tidied up after themselves. That's why no one's found him. close to the crease, looking rather pleased with himself, Ron handed the slightly smoking handkerchief to Hermione. "Oh, thanks, Ron. I'm sorry." She blew her nose and hiccuped. "It's just so awful, isn't it? Right after Dumbledore. I just never imagined Mad-Eye dying somehow. He seems so tough." "Yeah, I know," said Ron, giving her a squeeze. "But you know what he'd say to us if he was here? Constant vigilance," said Hermione, mopping her eyes. "That's right," said Ron, nodding. "He'd tell us to learn from what happened to him, and what I've learned is not to trust that cowardly little squirtmundungus." Hermione gave a shaky laugh and leaned forward to pick up 2 more books. A second later, Ron had snatched his arm back from around her shoulders. She had dropped the monster of monsters on his foot. The book had broken free from his restraining belt and snapped viciously at Ron's ankle. I'm sorry, Hermione cried as Harry wrenched the book from Ron's leg and tied it shut. "What are you doing with all these books anyway?" Ron asked, limping back to his bed. "Just trying to decide which ones to take with us," said Hermione, "when we're looking for the Horcruxes." "Oh, of course," said Ron, clapping a hand to his forehead. "I forgot we'll be hunting down Voldemort in the mobile library." "Ha, ha," said Hermione, looking down at Spellman Silbury. "I wonder, will we need to translate runes? It's possible. I think we'd better take it to be safe." She dropped the Silbury onto the larger of the 2 piles and picked up Hogwarts History. "Listen," said Harry. He had sat up straight. Ron and Hermione looked at him with similar mixtures of resignation and defiance. "I know you said after Dumbledore's funeral that you wanted to come with me," Harry began. "Here he goes," Ron said after Hermione, rolling his eyes. "As we knew he would," he sighed, turning back to the books. "You know, I think I would take Hogwarts History, even if we're not going back there. I don't think I'd feel right if I didn't have it with." "Listen," said Harry again. "No, Harry, you listen," said Hermione. "We're coming with you. That was decided months ago, years really." "But shut up, Ron," Ron advised him. "Are you sure you've thought this through?" Harry persisted. "Let's see," said Hermione, slamming Travels with Trolls onto the discarded pile with a rather fierce look. "I've been packing for days, so we were ready to leave at a moment's notice, which for your information has included doing some pretty difficult magic, not to mention smuggling Mad-Eye's whole sock of polyjuice potion right under Ron's mom's nose. I've also modified my parents' memories so that they're convinced they're really called Wendell and Marco Wilkins, and that their life's ambition is to move to Australia, which they now have done. And that's to make it more difficult for Voldemort to track them down and interrogate them about me, or you, because unfortunately I told them quite a bit about you. Assuming I survive our hunt for the Horcruxes, I'll find Mom and Dad and lift enchantment. If I don't, well, I think I've got a cast a good enough charm to keep them safe and happy. Wendell and Monica Wilkins don't know they've got the daughter, you see." Hermione's eyes were swimming with tears again. Ron got back off the bed, put his arms around her once more, and frowned at Harry as though reproaching him for a lack of tact. Harry could not think of anything to say, not because it was highly unusual for Ron to be teaching anyone else tact. Hermione, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that Ron and I perfectly know well what might happen if we come with you. Well, we do. Ron, show Harry what you've done." "Nah, he's just eating," said Ron. "Go on, he needs to know." All right, Harry, come here." For the second time, Ron withdrew his arm from around Hermione and stumped over to the door. "Come on." "Why?" Harry asked, following Ron out of the room onto the tiny landing. "Descendo," muttered Ron, pointing his wand at the low ceiling. A hatch opened right over their heads, and a ladder slid down to their feet. A horrible, half-sucking, half-moaning sound came out of the square hole, along with an unpleasant smell like open drains. "That's your ghoul, isn't it?" asked Harry, who had never actually met the creature that sometimes disrupted the nightly silence. "Yeah, it is," said Ron, climbing the ladder. "Come and have a look at him." Harry followed Ron up the few short steps into the tiny attic space. His head and shoulders were in the room before he caught sight of the creature curled up a few feet from him, fast asleep in the gloom with his large mouth wide open. "But it looks too said Ron. Nor have they usually got red hair or that number of pustules. Harry contemplated the thing, slightly revolted. It was human in shape and size, and was wearing what, now that Harry's eyes became used to the darkness, was clearly an old pair of Ron's pajamas. He was also sure that ghouls were generally rather slim and bald, rather than distinctly hairy and covered in angry purple blisters. "It's me, see," Ron said. "No," said Harry, "I don't. I'll explain it back in my room. The smell's getting to me," said Ron. They climbed back down the ladder, which Ron returned to the ceiling and rejoined Hermione, who was still sorting books. "Once we've left, the ghoul is going to come and live down here in my room," said Ron. "I think he's really looking forward to it. Well, it's hard to tell because all you can do is moan and drool. But he nods a lot when you mention it. Anyway, he's going to be me with Splattergroit. Good, eh?" Harry merely looked his confusion. "It is," said Ron, clearly frustrated that Harry did not grasp the brilliance of the plan. "Look, when we three don't turn up at Hogwarts again, everyone's going to think Hermione and I must be with you, Roy. Which means the Death Eaters will go straight for our families to see if they got information on where you are. But hopefully it'll look like I've gone away with Mum and Dad. A lot of muggleborns are talking about going into hiding at the moment," said Hermione. "We can't hide my whole family. It'll look too fishy, and they can't all leave their jobs," said Ron. "So we're going to put out the story that I'm seriously ill with Splattergroit, which is why I can't go back to school. If anyone comes to investigate, Mum and Dad can show them the ghoul in my bed, covered in pustules. Splattergroit's really contagious, so they're not going to want to go near him. It won't matter that he can't say anything either, because apparently you can't once the fungus has spread to your uvula. And your Mum and Dad are on this plan," asked Harry. "Dad is. He helped Fred and George transform the ghoul. Mum, well, you've seen what she's like. She won't accept that we're going until we're gone." There was silence in the room, broken only by gentle thuds as Hermione continued to throw books onto the pile or the other. Ron sat watching her, and Harry looked from one to the other, unable to say anything. The measure they had taken to protect their families made him realize more than anything else could have done that they really were going to come with him, and that they knew exactly how dangerous that would be. He wanted to tell them what that meant to him, but he could simply not find the words important enough. Through the silence came the muffled sounds of Mrs. Weasley shouting from 4 floors below. "Ginny's probably left a speck of dust on a boxy napkin ring," said Ron. "I don't know why the Delacours have got to come 2 days before the wedding. Fleur's sister is a bridesmaid. She needs to be here for the rehearsal, and she's too young to come on her own," said Hermione, as she pored indecisively over a break with a banshee. "Well, guests aren't going to help Mum's stress levels," said Ron. "What we really need to decide," said Hermione, tossing the Mensa magical theory into the bin without a second glance and picking up an appraisal of magical education a year up, "is where we're going after we leave here. I know you said you wanted to go to Godric's Hollow first, Harry, and I understand why. But, well, should we make the Horcruxes our priority? If we knew where any of the Horcruxes were, I'd agree with you," said Harry, who did not believe that Hermione really understood his desire to return to Godric's Hollow. His parents' graves were only part of the attraction. He had a strong, though inexplicable feeling that the place held answers for him. Perhaps it was simply because it was there he had survived Voldemort's killing curse. Now that he was facing the challenge of repeating the feat, Harry was drawn to the place where it happened, wanting to understand. "Don't you think there's a possibility that Voldemort's keeping a watch on Godric's Hollow?" Hermione asked. "He might expect you to go back and visit your parents' graves once you're free to go wherever you like." This had not occurred to Harry. While he struggled to find a counter-argument, Ron spoke up, evidently following his own train of thought. "This R.A.B. person," he said, "you know, the one who stole the real locket?" Hermione nodded. "He said in his note he was going to destroy it, didn't he?" Harry dragged his rucksack toward him and pulled out the fake Horcrux in which R.A.B.'s note was still folded. "I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy They were still library books, even if Dumbledore had taken them off the shelves. Anyway, if he really didn't want anyone to get them, I'm sure he would have made it much harder to. Get to the point, said Ron. Well, it was easy, said Hermione in a small voice. I just did a summoning charm, you know. I see how, and they zoomed out of Dumbledore's study window right into the girls' dormitory. Well, when did you do this? Harry asked, regarding Hermione with a mixture of admiration and incredulity. Shit. Just after his Dumbledore's funeral, said Hermione in an even smaller voice. Right after we agreed we'd leave school and go back and look for the Horcruxes. When I went back upstairs to get my things, it just occurred to me that the more we knew about them, the better it would be, and I was alone in there, so I tried, and it worked. They flew straight into the open window, and I packed them. She swallowed and said imploringly, I can't believe Dumbledore would have been so angry. It's not as though we're going to use the information to make a Horcrux, is it? Can't you hear us complaining, said Ron. Where are these books anyway? Hermione rummaged for a moment and then extracted from the pile a large volume bound in faded black leather. She looked a little nauseated as it held it as gingerly as if it was something recently dead. This is the one that gives explicit instructions on how to make a Horcrux. Secrets of the Darkest Art is a horrible book, really awful, full of evil magic. I wonder when Dumbledore removed it from the library, if he didn't do it until he was headmaster. I bet Voldemort got all the instruction he needed from here. Why did he have to ask Slughorn how to make a Horcrux then, if he had already read that? Asked Ron. He only approached Slughorn to find out what would happen if you split your soul into 7, said Harry. Dumbledore was sure Riddle already knew how to make a Horcrux by the time he asked Slughorn about them. I think you're right, Hermione. That could easily be where he had got the information. And the more I've read about them, said Hermione, the more horrible they seem, and the less I can believe that he actually made 6. It warns in this book how unstable you make the rest of your soul by ripping it, and that's just by making one Horcrux. Harry remembered what Dumbledore had said about Voldemort moving beyond usual evil. Isn't there any way of putting yourself back together? Ron asked. Yes, said Hermione with a hollow smile, but it would be excruciatingly painful. Why? How do you do it? Asked Harry. Remorse, said Hermione. You've got to really feel what you've done. There's a footnote. Apparently the pain of it can destroy you. I can't see Voldemort attempting it somehow, can you? No, said Ron, before Harry could answer. So does it say I destroy the Horcruxes in that book? Yes, said Hermione, now turning the fragile pages as if examining rotting entrails, because it warns dark wizards how strong they have to make the enchantments on them. From all that I've read, what Harry did to Riddle's diary was one of the few really foolproof ways of destroying a Horcrux. What, stabbing it with a basilisk fang? Asked Harry. Oh, well, lucky we've got a large supply of basilisk fangs, said Ron. I was wondering what we were going to do with them. It doesn't have to be a basilisk fang, said Hermione patiently. It has to be something so destructive that the Horcrux can't repair itself. Basilisk venom only has one antidote, and it's incredibly rare. Phoenix tears, said Harry, nodding. Exactly, said Hermione. Our problem is that there are very few substances as destructive as basilisk venom, and they're all very dangerous to carry around with you. That's a problem we're going to have to solve through, because ripping, smashing, or crushing a Horcrux won't do the trick. You've got to put a magical repair. But even if we wreck the thing it lives in, said Ron, why can't the bit of soul in it just go and live in something else? Because a Horcrux is the complete opposite of a human being. Seeing that Ron and Harry looked thoroughly confused, Hermione hurried on. Look, if I picked up a sword right now, Ron, and ran you through it, I wouldn't damage your soul at all. Which would be a real comfort to me, I'm sure, said Ron. Harry laughed. It should be, actually, but my point is that whatever happens to your body, your soul will survive untouched, said Hermione. But it's the other way around with a Horcrux. soul inside it depends on its container, its enchanted body for survival. It can't exist without it. That diary sort of died when I stabbed it, said Harry, remembering ink pouring like blood from the punctured pages and the screams of the piece of Voldemort's soul as it vanished. And once the diary was properly destroyed, the bit of soul trapped in it could no longer exist. Ginny tried to get rid of the diary before he did, flushing it away, but obviously it came back good as new. Hang on, said Ron, frowning. The bit of soul in that diary was possessing Ginny, wasn't it? How does that work then? Well, the magical container is still intact. The bit of soul inside can flip in and out of someone if they got too close to it, to the object. I don't mean holding it for too long. It's nothing to do without touching it, she added before Ron could speak. I mean, close emotionally. Ginny poured her heart out into the diary. She made herself incredibly vulnerable. You're in trouble if you get too fond or too dependent on the Horcrux. I wonder how Dumbledore destroyed the ring, said Harry. Why didn't I ask him? I never really. His voice trailed away. He was thinking of all the things he should have asked Dumbledore, and of now. Since the headmaster had died, it seemed to Harry that he had wasted so many opportunities when Dumbledore had been alive to find out more, to find out everything. The silence has shattered as the bedroom door flew open with a wall-shaking crash. Hermione shrieked and dropped secrets of the darkest art. Crookshanks shrieked under the bed, hissing indignantly. Ron jumped off the bed, skidded onto a discarded chocolate frog wrapper, and smacked his head on the opposite wall. And Harry instinctively dived for his wand before realizing that he was looking up at Mrs. Weasley, whose hair was disheveled and whose face was contorted with rage. I'm so sorry to break up this little cozy gathering, she said, her voice trembling. I'm sure you all need your rest, but there are wedding presents stacked in my room that need sorting out, and I was under the impression that you had agreed to help. Oh yes, said Hermione, looking terrified as she leapt to her feet, sending books flying in every direction. We're sorry. With an anguished look at Harry and Ron, Hermione hurried out of the room after Miss Weasley. It's like being a house elf, complained Ron in an undertone, still massaging his head as he and Harry followed, except without the job satisfaction. The sooner the wedding's over, the happier I'll be. Yeah, said Harry. Then we'll have nothing to do except find Horcruxes. It'll be like a holiday, won't it? Ron started to laugh, but at the sight of the enormous pile of wedding presents waiting for them in Mrs. Weasley's room, stopped quite abruptly. The Delacours arrived the following morning at 11 o'clock. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Ginny were feeling quite resentful toward Fleur's family by this time, and it was with ill grace that Ron stumped back upstairs to put on matching socks, and Harry attempted to flatten his hair. Once they had been all deemed smart enough, they trooped out into the sunny backyard to await the visitors. Harry had never seen the place looking so tidy. The rusty cauldrons and old Wellington boots usually littered the steps by the back door were gone, replaced by two new flutterby bushes standing either side of the door in large pots. There were no breeze. The leaves waved lazily, giving an attractive rippling effect. The chickens had been shut away, the yard had been swept, and the nearby garden had been pruned, plucked, and generally spruced up. Although Harry, who liked in its overall state, thought that it looked rather forlorn without its usual contingent of Cape Green gnomes. He had lost track of how many security enchantments had been placed upon the borough by both the Order and the Ministry. All he knew was that it was no longer possible for anybody to travel by magic directly into the place. Mr. Weasley had therefore gone to meet the Delacours on top of a nearby hill, where there were two arrived by portkey. The first sound of their approach was an unusually high-pitched laugh, which turned out to be coming from Mr. Weasley, who appeared at the gate moments later, laden with luggage and leading a beautiful blonde woman in long, leaf-green robes, who could be Fleur's mother. Maman, cried Fleur, rushing forward to embrace her. Papa! Monsieur de Delacour was nowhere near as attractive as his wife. He was a head shorter and extremely plump, with a little pointed black beard. However, he looked good wife, Apolline. Madame Delcourt glided forward and stooped to kiss Mrs. Weasley too. Enchanté, she said, your husband's up and down like a summer losing stories. Mr. Weasley gave a maniacal laugh. Mrs. Weasley threw him a look upon which he became immediately silent and assumed an expression appropriate to the sick bed of a close friend. And of course you've met my little daughter Gabrielle, said Monsieur Delacour. Gabrielle was Fleur in miniature, 11 years old, with whistled hair of pure silvery blonde. She gave Mrs. Weasley a dazzling smile and hugged her, then threw Harry a glowing look, batting her eyelashes. Ginny cleared her throat loudly. Well, come in, do, said Mrs. Weasley brightly, and she ushered the Delacours into the house with many no pleases and after yous and not at alls. The Delacours, it soon transpired, were helpful, pleasant guests. They were pleased with everything and came to assist with the preparations for the wedding. Monsieur Delacour pronounced everything from the seating plan to the bridesmaid shoes. Madame Delacour was most accomplished as to household spells, and had the oven properly cleaned and a trace. Gabrielle followed her eldest sister around, trying to assist in any way she could in jabbering away in rapid French. On the downside, the burrow was not built to accommodate so many people. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley were now sleeping in the sitting room, having shouted down Monsieur and Madame Delacour's protests and insisted that they take their bedroom. Gabrielle was sleeping with Fleur in Percy's old room, and Bill would be sharing it with Charlie, his best man. Once Charlie arrived from Romania, opportunities to make plans together became virtually non-existent, and it was in desperation that Harry, Ron, and Hermione took to volunteering to feed the chickens just to escape the overcrowded house. But she still won't leave us alone, snarled Ron. In their second attempt at a meeting in the yard was foiled by the appearance of Mrs. Weasley, carrying a large basket of laundry in her arms. Oh, good, you fed the chickens, she called as she approached them. We'd better shut them away again before the man arrived tomorrow to put up the tent for the wedding, she explained, pausing to lean against the hen house. She looked exhausted. Millamant's magic monkeys, they're very good. Bill is escorting them. You'd better stay inside while they're here, Harry. I must say it does complicate organizing a wedding, having all these security spells around the place. I'm sorry, said Harry humbly. Oh, don't be silly, dear, said Mrs. Weasley at once. I didn't mean, oh, well, your safety's much more important. Actually, I've been wanting to ask you how you want to celebrate your birthday, Harry. 17, after all, is an important day. I don't want to fuss, said Harry quickly, envisaging the additional strain this would put on them all. Really, Miss Weasley, just a normal dinner would be fine. It's the day before the wedding. Oh, well, if you're sure, dear, I'll invite Ribs and Tongue, shall I? And how about Hagrid? That'd be great, said Harry, but please don't go to loads of trouble. Not at all, it's no trouble. She looked at him a long, searching look, then smiled a little sadly, straightened up, and walked away. Harry watched as she waved her wand near the washing line, and the damp clothes rose in the air to hang themselves, and suddenly he felt a great wave of remorse for the inconvenience and the pain he was giving her. Oh my goodness! Woo! End of the chapter! Wow! Oh my gosh. How you lie? Okay. I'll end right there. Woo! Good. Okay. Woo! Alright, bye. Chapter 7. I know you enjoyed chapter 6. It was very... oh no. This is about to get real bad. Okay. He was walking along a mountain road in the cool blue light of dawn. Far below, swathed in mist, was the shadow of a small town. It was the man he sought down there, the man he needed so badly. He could think of nothing else. The man who held the answer to his problem. Oi, wake up. Harry opened his eyes. He was lying again on the camp bed in Ron's dingy attic room. The sun had not yet risen, and the room was still shadowy. Pidwiggin was asleep on his head under his tiny wing. The scar on Harry's forehead was prickling. You were muttering in your sleep. Was I? Yeah, Gregovich. You kept saying Gregovich. Harry was not wearing his glasses. Ron's face appeared slightly blurred. Who's Gregovich? I don't know, do I? You were the one saying it. Smart-ass Ron. Harry rubbed his forehead, thinking. He had a vague idea. He had heard the name before, but he could not think where. I think Voldemort's looking for him. Poor bloke, said Ron fervently. Harry sat up, still rubbing his scar. Now wide awake, he tried to remember exactly what he had seen in the dream, but all that came back was a mountainous horizon and the outline of the little village cradled in a deep valley. I think he is abroad. He is Gregovich Voldemort. I think he's somewhere abroad looking for Gregovich. It didn't look anywhere in Britain. You reckon you were seeing into his mind again? Ron sounded worried. Do me a favor and don't tell Hermione. Still, said Harry. Although, how she expects me to stop seeing stuff in my sleep. He gazed about little Pidwiggian's cage, thinking, why was the name Gregovich familiar? I think, he said slowly, he's got something to do with Quidditch. There's some connection, but I can't think what it is. Quidditch, said Ron. Sure you're not thinking of Gorovich? Who? Dragomir Gorgovich, chaser, transferred to the Chudley Cannons for a record fee 2 years ago. Record holder for most quaffle drops in a season. No, said Harry, I'm definitely not thinking of Gorgovich. I try not to either, said Ron. Well, happy birthday anyway. Wow, that's right, I forgot. I'm 17. Harry seized the wand lying beside his camp bed, pointed at the cluttered desk where he had left his glass, and said, I see your glasses. Although they were around a foot away, there was something immensely satisfying about seeing them zoom toward him, at least until they poked him in the eye. Slick, snorted Ron. Reveling in the removal trace, Harry's sent Ron's possessions flying around the room, causing Pidwiggin to wake up and flutter excitedly around his cage. Harry also tried tying the laces of his trainers by magic. The resultant knot took several minutes to untie by hand, and purely for the pleasure of it, turned the orange robes on Ron's Chudley Cannon's poster bright blue. I'd do your fly by hand, though, Ron advised Harry, sniggering when Harry immediately checked it. Here's your present. Unwrap it here. It's not from my mother's eyes. A book? Said Harry as he took the rectangular parcel. Bit of a departure from tradition, isn't it? This isn't your average book, said Ron. It'd be pure gold. 12 fail-safe ways to charm witches. It explains everything you need to know about girls. If only I'd had that last year, I'd have known exactly how to get rid of lavender, and I would have known how to get along with... Well, Fred and George gave me a copy, and I've learned a lot. You'd be surprised. It's not all about wand work. What the fuck? This is actual words in this book. This is a freaking erotica fanfic. This is the real deal. When they arrived in the kitchen, they found a pleasant waiting on the table. Bill and Monsieur Delcaire were finishing their bread fixes, while Mrs. Weasley stood chatting to them over the frying pan. Arthur told me to wish you a happy 17th, said Mrs. Weasley, beaming at how he had to leave early for work, but he'll be back for dinner. That's our present on top. Harry sat down, took the square parcel she had indicated and unwrapped it. Inside was a watch, very like the one Mr. and Mrs. Weasley had given Ron for his 17th. It was gold, with stars circling around the race inside of Hans. "It's tradition to give a wizard a watch when he comes of age," said Mr. Weasley, watching her anxiously from beside the cooker. "I'm afraid that one isn't new like Ron's. It was actually my brother Fabian's, and he was a totally coffer with his possessions. It's a bit dented on the back, but..." The rest of her speech was lost. Harry had got it up and hugged her. He tried to put a lot of unsaid things into the hug, and perhaps she understood them because his... Okay, woo! Because she patted his cheek clumsily when he released her, then waved her hand in a slightly random way, causing half a pack of bacon to flop out of the frying pan onto the floor. "Happy birthday, Harry," said Hermione, hurrying into the kitchen and adding her own present to the top of the pile. "It's not much, but I hope you like it. What did you get him?" she added to Ron, who seemed not to hear her. "Come on, then, open Hermione's," said Ron. She had bought him a new sneakoscope. The other packages contained an enchanted razor from Bernafleur. "Oh yes, this will give you some smooth shave you'll ever have. Monsieur Delacour, but you must clearly what you want, otherwise you might find you have a little less hair than you would like." Chocolates on the delicacies, an enormous box of the latest Weasley's Wizard Weasley's merchandise from Fred and George. Harry, Ron, and Hermione did not linger at the table, as the arrival of Madame Claire, Fleur, and Gabrielle would make the kitchen uncomfortably crowded. "I'll pack these for you," Hermione said brightly, taking Harry's presents out of his arms as the three of them headed back upstairs. "I'm nearly done. I'm just waiting for the rest of you under your pants to come out of the wash, Ron." Ron's splutter was interrupted by the opening of a door on the first floor landing. "Harry, will you come in here for a moment?" It was Ginny. "Oh, shit." Ron came to an abrupt halt, but Hermione took him by the elbow and tugged him back up the stairs, feeling nervous. Harry followed Ginny into her room. He had never been inside it before. It was small but bright. There was a large poster of the Wizarding Band, the Weird Sisters, on one wall, and a picture of Gwenog Jones, captain of the Old Witch Quidditch team, the Holyhead Harpies, on the other. A desk stood facing the open window, which looked out over the orchard where he and Ginny had once played a two-sided Quidditch with Ron and Hermione, and which now housed a large pearly white marquee. The golden flag on top was level with Ginny's window. Ginny looked up into Harry's face, took a deep breath, and said, "Happy 17th. Yeah, thanks." She was looking at him steadily. He, however, found it difficult to look back at her. It was like gazing into a brilliant light. "Nice view," he said, feebly, pointing toward the window. She ignored this. He could not blame her. "I couldn't think what to get you," she said. "You didn't have to get me anything." She disregarded this too. "I didn't know what would be useful. Nothing too big, because you wouldn't be able to take it with you." He chanced to glance at her. She was not tearful. That was one of the many wonderful things about Ginny. She was rarely weepy. She had sometimes thought that having 6 brothers must have toughened her up. She took a step closer to him. "So then I thought, I'd like you to have something to remember me by. You know, if you meet some Vila when you're off doing whatever you're doing." "I think dating opportunities are going to be pretty thin on the ground, to be honest." "There's a silver lining I've been looking for," she whispered. And then she was kissing him, as she had never kissed him before, and Harry was kissing her back. And it was blissful oblivion, better than fire whiskey. She was the only real thing in the world, Ginny. The feel of her, one hand at her back and one in her long, sweet-smelling hair. The door banged open behind them and they jumped apart. "Oh," said Ron pointedly, "sorry." "Ron!" Hermione was just behind them, slight out of breath. There was a strange silence. Then Ginny had said in a flat, low voice, "Well, happy birthday anyway, Harry." Ron's ears were scarlet. Hermione looked nervous. Harry wanted to slam the door in their faces, but it felt as though a cold draft had entered the room when the door opened, and his shining moment had popped like a soap bubble. All the reasons for ending his relationship with Ginny, for staying well away from her, seemed to have slunk inside the room with Ron, and all happy forgetfulness were gone. "Good job, Ron, you freaking cockblock." He looked at Ginny, wanting to say something, though he hardly knew what, but she had turned her back on him. He thought she might have succumbed for once to tears. He could not do anything to comfort her in front of Ron. "I'll see you later," he said, and followed the other two out of the bedroom. Ron marched downstairs through the still crowded kitchen and into the yard, and Harry kept pace with them all the way, Hermione trotting along behind them, looking scared. Once he reached the seclusion of the freshly mown lawn, rounded on Harry. "You ditched her! What are you doing now, messing her around?" "I'm not messing her around," said Harry, as Hermione caught up with him. But Ron held up a hand to silence her. "She was really caught up with you and did it." "So was I. You know why I stopped it. And it wasn't because I wanted to." "Yeah, but you go snogging her now. She's just going to get her hopes up again. She's not an idiot. She knows it can't happen. She's not expecting us to end up married." As she said it, a vivid picture formed in Harry's mind of Ginny in a white dress marrying a tall, faceless, and unpleasant stranger. In one spiraling moment, it seemed to hit him. Her future was free and unencumbered, whereas his, he could see nothing but Voldemort ahead. "If you keep groping her every chance you get, it won't happen again," said Harry harshly. The day was cloudless, but he felt as though the sun had gone in. "Okay." Ron looked half resentful, half sheepish. He rocked backward and forward on his feet for a moment, then said, "Right then, well, that's yeah." Ginny did not seek another one-to-one meeting with Harry for the rest of the day, nor by any look or gesture did she show that they had shared more than polite conversation in her room. Nevertheless, Charlie's arrival came as a relief to Harry. It provided a distraction while watching Mrs. Weasley force Charlie into a chair, raise her wand threateningly, and announce that he was about to get a proper haircut. As Harry's birthday dinner would have stretched the Burrows' kitchen to breaking point even before the arrival of Charlie, Lupin, Tonks, and Hagrid, several tables were placed end to end in the garden. Fred and George bewitched a number of purple lanterns, all emblazoned with a large number 17 to hang mid-air over the guests. Thanks to Mrs. Weasley's administrations, George's wound was neat and clean, but Harry was not yet used to the dark hole in the side of his head, despite the twins' many jokes about it. Hermione made purple and gold streamers erupt from the end of her wand and draped themselves artistically over the tree and bushes. Nice one," said Ron, as with one final flourish of her wand, Hermione turned the leaves on the crabapple tree to gold. "You've really got an eye for that sort of thing." "Thank you, Ron," said Hermione. Looking both pleased and a little confused, Harry turned away, smiling to himself. He had a funny notion that he would find a chapter on compliments when he found time to pursue his copy of 12 Failsafe Ways to Tom Witches. He caught Ginny's eye and grinned at her before remembering his promise to Ron and hurriedly striking up a conversation with Monsieur de la Quere. Out of the way," sang Mrs. Weasley, coming through the gate with what appeared to be a giant beet-ball-sized snitch floating in front of her. Seconds later, Harry realized that it was a birthday cake, which Miss Weasley was suspending with her wand, rather than risk carrying it over the uneven ground. When the cake had finally landed in the middle of the table, Harry said, "That looks amazing, Mrs. Weasley." "Oh, it's nothing, dear," she said fondly. Over her shoulder, Ron gave Harry the thumbs up and mouthed, "Good one." By 7 o'clock, all the guests had arrived, led into the house by Fred and George, who had waited for them at the end of the lane. Hagrid had on the occasion by wearing his best and horrible Harry Brown suit.
Although Lupin smiled as he shook Harry's hand, Harry thought he looked rather unhappy. It was all very odd. Tonks beside him looked simply radiant. Simply radiant. Happy birthday, Harry, she said, hugging him tightly. 17, eh, said Hagrid as he expected a bucket-sized glass of wine from Fred. 6 years to the day since we met, Harry. Do you remember it? Vaguely, said Harry, grinning up at him. Didn't you smash down the front door, give Dudley a pig's tail, and tell me I was a wizard? I forged the details, Hagrid twittered. All right, Ron, Hermione. You're a wizard, Harry. Oh, Hagrid, you're a wizard. Oh, Hagrid, yeah. Am I a wizard? You're a wizard, Harry. Harry, you're a wizard. Hagrid, Harry, you're a wizard. Hagrid, Harry, you're a wizard. Oh my god. I forged the details, Hagrid chortled. All right, Ron, Hermione. We're fine, said Hermione. How are you? Oh, not bad. Been busy. We got some newborn unicorns. I'll show you when you get back. Harry avoided Ron and Hermione's gazes as Hagrid rummaged in his pocket. Here, Harry. Couldn't think what to get you, but then I remembered this. He pulled out a small, slightly furry drawstring pouch with a long string, evidently intended to be worn around the neck. Mock skin. Hide anything in there, and no one but the owner can get it out. They're rare, them. Hagrid, thanks. It's nothing, said Hagrid with a wave of dustbin lid-sized hand. And that's Charlie. Always like to meet Charlie. Charlie approached his head slightly ruefully over his new brutally short haircut. He was shorter than Ron, thick-set with a number of burns and scratches up his muscled arms. Hi, Hagrid, how's it going? Been Maynard to rat for ages. How's Norbert doing? Norbert, Charlie laughed. The Norwegian Ridgepack, and we call her Norbetta now. What? Norbert's a girl? Raggy? Oh, yeah, said Charlie. How can you tell? Asked Hermione. They're a lot more vicious, said Charlie. He looked over his shoulder and dropped his voice. Wish Dad would hurry up and get here. Mom's getting edgy. They all looked at Mrs. Weasley. She was trying to talk to Madame Delacour while glancing repeatedly at the gate. I think we'd better start without Arthur, she called to the garden at a lodge after a moment or two. He must have been held up at... Oh, they all saw it at the same time, a streak of light that came flying across the yard and onto the table, where it resolved itself into a bright silver weasel, which stood on its hind legs and spoke with Mr. Weasley's voice. Minister of Magic coming with me. The Patronus dissolved into thin air, leaving Fleur's family peering in astonishment at the place where it had vanished. We shouldn't be here, said Lupin at once. Harry, I'm sorry. I'll explain some other time. He seized Tonks' wrist and pulled her away. They reached the fence, climbed over it, and vanished from sight. Mrs. Weasley looking bewildered. The minister, but why? I don't understand. But there was no time to discuss the matter. A second later, Mr. Weasley had appeared out of thin air at the gate, accompanied by Rufus Scrimgeour, instantly recognizable by his mane of grizzled hair. The two newcomers marched across the yard toward the garden and the lantern-lit table, where everybody sat in silence, watching them draw closer. As Scrimgeour came in within range of the lantern light, Harry saw that he looked much older than the last time that they had met, scraggy and grim. Sorry to intrude, said Scrimgeour, as he limped to a halt before the table, especially as I can see that I am gate-gracing a party. His eyes lingered for a moment on the giant snitch cake. Many happy returns. Thanks, said Harry. I require a private word with you, Scrimgeour went on. Also with Mr. Ronald Weasley and Miss Hermione Granger. Us? Said Ron, sounding surprised. Why us? I shall tell you that when we are somewhere more private, said Scrimgeour. Is there such a place? He demanded of Mr. Weasley. Yes, of course, said Mr. Weasley, who looked nervous. The sitting room. Why don't you use that? You can lead the way. Scrimgeour said to Ron, there will be no need for you to accompany us, Arthur. Harry saw Mr. Weasley exchange a worried look with Mrs. Weasley as he, Ron, and Hermione stood up as they led the way back to the House of Silence. Harry knew that the other two were thinking the same as he was. Scrimgeour must somehow have learned that the three of them were planning to drop out of Hogwarts. Scrimgeour did not speak as they all passed through the messy kitchen and into the Burrows sitting room. Although the garden had been full of soft, golden evening light, it was already dark in here. Harry flicked his wand at the oil lamps as he entered, and they illuminated the shabby but cozy room. Scrimgeour sat himself in the sagging armchair that Mrs. Weasley normally occupied, leaving Harry, Ron, and Hermione to squeeze side by side onto the sofa. Once they had done so, Scrimgeour spoke. I have some questions for the three of you, and I think it would be best if we do it individually. If you two, he pointed at Harry and Hermione, can wait upstairs. I will start with Ronald. Well, I'm not going anywhere, said Harry, while Hermione nodded vigorously. You can speak to us all together, or not at all. Scrimgeour gave Harry a cold, appraising look. Harry had the impression that the minister was wondering whether it was worthwhile opening hostilities this early. Very well done together, he said, shrugging. He cleared his throat. I am here, as I'm sure you know, because of Albus Dumbledore's will. Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another. A surprise, apparently. You were not aware that the Dumbledore had left you anything. All of us? Me and Hermione too? Yes, all of. But Harry interrupted. Dumbledore died over a month ago. Why has it taken us so long to give what he's left? Isn't it obvious? Said Hermione before Scrimgeour could answer. They wanted to examine whatever he's left us. You had no right to do that, she said, and her voice trembled slightly. I had every right, said Scrimgeour dismissively. The decree for justifiable confiscation gives the ministry the power to confiscate the contents of a will. That law was created to stop wizards passing on dark artifacts, said Hermione, and the ministry is supposed to have powerful evidence that the deceased possessions are illegal before seizing them. Are you telling me that you thought Dumbledore was trying to pass out something cursed? Are you planning to follow a career in magical law, Miss Granger? Asked Scrimgeour. No, I'm not, Sarah retorted Hermione. I'm hoping to do some good in the world. Ron laughed. Scrimgeour's eyes flickered toward him in a way Harry spoke. So why did you decide to let us have our things now? Can't think of a pretext to keep them. No, it'll be because 31 days are up, said Hermione once. They can't keep the others longer than that unless they can prove that they're dangerous. Roar. Would you say you were close to Dumbledore, Ronald? Asked Scrimgeour, ignoring Hermione. Ron looked startled. Me? No, not really. There's only Harry here. Ron looked at Harry and Hermione to see Hermione giving a stop talking now sort of look, but the damage was done. Scrimgeour looked as though he had heard exactly what he expected and wanted to hear. He swooped like a bird of prey around his hand. If you're not very close to Dumbledore, how do you account for the fact that he remembered you in his will? He may accept a few personal bequests. The vast majority of his possessions, his private library, magical instruments, and other personal effects were left to Hogwarts. What do you think you were singled out? I don't know, said Ron. When we were close, I think he liked me. You're being modest, Ron, said Hermione. Dumbledore was very fond of ye. This was stretching the truth to a breaking point. As far as Harry knew, Ron and Dumbledore had never been alone together, and direct contact between them had been negligible. However, Scrimgeour did not seem to be listening. He put his hand inside his cloak and drew out a drawstring pouch much larger than the one Hagrid had given Harry from it. He removed a scroll of parchment, which he unrolled and read aloud. "The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Yes, we are here to run Bilious Weasley. I leave my Deluminator in the hope that he will remember me when he uses it." Scrimgeour took from the bag an object that Harry had seen before. It looked something like a solar cigarette lighter, but it had the power to suck all light from a place and restore it with a simple click. Scrimgeour leaned forward and passed the Deluminator to Ron, who took it and turned it over in the fingers, looking stunned. "That is a valuable object," said Scrimgeour, watching Ron. "It may be even unique. Certainly, it is of Dumbledore's own design. Why would he have left you in the item so rare?" Ron shook his head, looking bewildered. Dumbledore must have taught thousands of students, Scrimgeour preserved, yet the only ones he remembered in his will are you three. "Why is that? To what use did he think you would be to the Deluminator, Mr. Weasley?" "Put out lights, I suppose," rumbled Ron. "What else could I do with it?" Evidently, Scrimgeour had no suggestions. After squinting at Ron for a moment or two, he turned back to Dumbledore's will. "To Miss Hermione Granger, I leave my copy of the Tales of Beetle the Bard in the hope that she will find it entertaining and instructive." Scrimgeour now pulled out of the bag a small book that looked as ancient as a copy of Secrets of the Darkest Arts of Stars. Its binding was stained and peeling in places. Hermione took it from Scrimgeour without a word. She held the book in her lap, gazed at it. Harry saw that the title was in runes. He had never learned to read them. As he looked, the tears splashed upon the bottom symbols. "Why do you think Dumbledore left you that book, Miss Granger?" asked Scrimgeour. He knew I liked books," said Hermione in a thick voice, mopping her eyes upon her sleeve. "But why that a particular book?" "I don't know. I think he must have thought I'd enjoy it." "Did you ever discuss codes or any means of passing secret messages with Dumbledore?" "No, I didn't," said Hermione, still wiping her eyes on his knee. "And if the mystery hasn't found any hidden codes in the book in 31 days, I doubt that I will." She suppressed a sob. They were wedged together so tightly that Ron had difficulty in extracting his arm to put it around Hermione's shoulders. Scrimgeour turned back to the will. "To Harry James Potter," he read, and Harry's insides contracted with a sudden excitement. "I leave the snitch," he caught in his first Quidditch match at Hogwarts, as a reminder of the words of preservation and skill. As Scrimgeour pulled out the tiny walnut-sized golden ball, its silver wings fluttered rather feebly, and Harry could not help feeling a definite sense of anticlimax. "Why did Dumbledore leave you this snitch?" asked Scrimgeour. "Oh, I think it might be one of the Horcruxes. That's just my hypothesis. It's a Horcrux. "No idea," said Harry. "For the reasons you just read out, I suppose, to remind me what you can get if you preserve in whatever it was." "You think this is a mere symbolic keepsake, then?" "I suppose so, sir. Well, what else could it be? I'm asking the question," said Scrimgeour, shifting his chair a little closer to the sofa. Dusk was really falling outside now. The marquee beyond the windows towered ghostly white over the hedge. "I noticed that your birthday cake is in the shape of a snitch," Scrimgeour said to Harry. "Why is that?" Hermione laughed deviously. "Oh, it can't be a reference to the fact that Harry's a great seeker. That's way too obvious," she said. "There must be a secret message from Dumbledore hidden in the icing." "I don't think there's anything hidden in the icing," said Scrimgeour, "but a snitch would be a very good hiding place for a small object. You know why, I'm sure?" Harry shrugged. Hermione, however, answered. Harry thought that answering questions correctly was such a deeply ingrained habit she could not suppress the urge. "Because snitches have flesh memories," she said. "What?" Harry and Ron together both considered Hermione's Quidditch knowledge negligible. "Correct," said Scrimgeour. "A snitch is not touched by bare skin before it is released, not even by the maker, who wears gloves. It carries an enchantment by which it can identify the first human to lay hands upon it, in case of a disputed capture. The snitch," he held up the tiny golden ball, "will remember your touch, Potter." It occurred to me that Dumbledore had prodigious magical skill, whatever his other faults, might have enchanted the snitch so that it will only open for you. Harry's heart was beating rather fast. He was sure that Scrimgeour was right. How could he avoid taking the snitch with a bare hand in front of the minister? You don't say anything, said Scrimgeour. Perhaps you already know what the snitch contains? No, said Harry, still wondering how he could appear to touch the snitch without really doing so. If only he knew legitimacy, really knew it, and could read Hermione's mind. He could practically hear her brain whizzing beside him. Take it, said Scrimgeour quietly. Take it. Harry met the minister's yellow eyes and knew he had no option but to obey. He held out his hand, and Scrimgeour leaned forward and placed the snitch slowly and deliberately into Harry's palm. Nothing happened. As Harry's fingers closed around the snitch's tiger's wings fluttered and were still, Scrimgeour, Ron, and Hermione continued to gaze avidly at the now partially concealed ball, as if still hoping it might transform in some way. That was dramatic, said Harry coolly. Both Ron and Hermione laughed. That's all then, is it? Asked Hermione, making to raise herself off the sofa. Not quite, said Scrimgeour, who liked bad temper now. Dumbledore left you a second bequest, Potter. What is it? Asked Hermione, excitement rekindling. Scrimgeour did not bother to read from this time. The sword of Godric Gryffindor, he said. Hermione and Ron both stiffened. Harry looked around for a sign of the ruby encrusted hilt, but Scrimgeour did not pull the sword from the leather pouch, which in any case was much too small to contain it. So was Harry asked suspiciously. Unfortunately, the sword was not Dumbledore's to give away. The sword of Godric Gryffindor is a more important historical artifact, and as such belongs. It belongs to Harry, said Hermione hotly. It chose him. He is the one who found it. It came to him out of the sorting hat. Wait, what? Wait. Why am I reading the sound book first? Jenna, this is on you, Jenna. According to reliable historical sources, the sword may present itself to anyone of the Gryffindor. That does not make it exclusive property of Mr. Potter, whatever Dumbledore must have decided. Scrimgeour scratched his badly shaven cheek, scrutinizing Harry. What do you think? Dumbledore wanted to give me the sword, said Harry, struggling to keep his temper. Maybe he thought it would look nice on my wall. This is not a joke, Potter, growled Scrimgeour. Was it because Dumbledore believed that the only sword of Gryffindor could defeat the Slytherin? Did he wish to give you that sword, Potter, because he believed, as do many, that you are the one destined to destroy the he who must not be named? Interesting theory, said Harry. Has anyone tried sticking a sword in the Voldemort? Maybe with the Ministry should put some people onto that instead of wasting their time stripping down the Illuminator they're covering up breakups from Azkaban. So this is what you've been doing, mister. Shut up and you're out of time to break up on the snitch. People are dying. I was nearly one. Voldemort chased me across 30 countries. He killed man. I mean, don't worry about any of that from Ministry, has it? And you still expect to cooperate with you? You go too far, shouted Scrimgeour, standing up. Harry jumped to his feet too. Scrimgeour leant toward Harry and jabbed him hard in the chest with the point of his wand. He seemed to hold in his t-shirt like a cigarette. Oi, said Ron, jumping up and raising his own wand, but Harry said, No. Do you want me to give you an excuse to arrest us? Remember, you're not at school, have you? Said Scrimgeour, breathing hard into Harry's face. Remember that I am not Dumbledore, who forgave your insolence and insubordination. You may wear that scar like a crown, Potter, but it is not up to a 17-year-old boy to tell me how to do my job. It's time you learn some respect, boy. It's time you earned it, said Harry. The floor trembled. There was the sound of running footsteps, and the door to the sitting room burst open. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley ran out. We thought we heard. Before Mr. Weasley, looking around at the sight of Harry and the mustard, no. Raise voices, panted Mr. Weasley. Scrimgeour took a couple of steps back from Harry, glancing at the hole he had made in Harry's t-shirt. He seemed to regret his loss of temper. It was nothing, he growled. I regret your attitude, he said, looking at Harry full in the face once more. You seem to think that the Ministry does not desire what Dumbledore desire. We ought to work together. I don't like your methods, Minister. Remember? For the second time he raised his right fist and displayed to Scrimgeour the scar that showed white on the back of it, spelling, I must not tell lies. Scrimgeour's expression hardened. He turned away with... I forget. He turned away without another word and limped from the room. Mrs. Wearley hurried after him. Harry heard her stop at the back door, and after a minute or so called, "He's gone." "What does he want?" Mr. Weasley asked, looking around at Harry and Ron and Hermione as Mrs. Weasley came hurrying back to them. "To give us what Dumbledore left us," said Harry. "They've only just released the content of his will." Outside in the garden over the dinner tables, the 3 objects Scrimgeour had given them were passed from hand to hand. Everyone exclaimed over the Deluminator and the tales of Beetle of the Bard and Lemonade, the fact that Scrimgeour had refused to pass on the sword, but none of them could offer any suggestion as to why Dumbledore would have left Harry an old snitch. As Mr. Weasley examined the Illuminator for the 3rd or 4th time, Mrs. Weasley said tentatively, "Harry dear, everything's awfully hungry. We didn't like to start without you. Shall I do dinner now?" They all ate rather heartily, and then after a hasty course of "Happy Birthday" and much gulping of cake, the party broke up. Hagrid, who was invited to the wedding the following day, but was far too bulky to sleep in the overstretched burrow, left to set up a tent for himself in a neighboring field. "Meet us upstairs," Harry whispered to Hermione when they helped Mrs. Weasley on the set after everyone's gone to bed. Up in the attic room, Ron examined his Deluminator, and Harry filled Hagrid's moleskin purse. Not good, but with those items he must prize, apparently worthless, though some of them were the Marauder's map, the shard of Sirius's enchanted mirror, and R.A.B.'s locket. He pulled the string tight and slipped the purse around his neck, then sat holding the old snitch and watching its wings flutter feebly. At last Hermione tapped on the door and tiptoed inside. "Muffiado," she whispered, waving her hand in the direction of the stairs. "Thought you didn't approve that spell," said Ron. "Times change," said Hermione. "Now show us that Deluminator." Ron obliged at once. Holding the eye in front of her, he clicked it. The solitary lamp they had lit went out at once. "The thing is," whispered Hermione through the dark, "we could have achieved that with Peruvian instant darkness powder." There was a small click, and the ball of light from the lamp flew back to the ceiling and illuminated them all once more. "Still at school," said Ron, a little defensively, and from what they said, Dumbledore invented himself. "I know, but surely he wouldn't have singled you out in his will just to help us turn on the lights." "Do you think he knew the Ministry would confiscate his will and examine everything he left us?" "Definitely," said Hermione. "He couldn't tell us in the will why he'd be leaving us these things, but that doesn't explain why he couldn't have given us a hint when he was alive," said Ron. "Well, exactly," said Ron, now flicking through the tales of Beetle and the Bard. "If these things are important enough to pass on right under the nose of the Ministry, you think he'd have let us know why? Unless he thought it was obvious." "Thought wrong then, didn't he?" said Ron. "I always said he was mental, brilliant and everything, but crocked. Leaving Harry an old snitch. What the hell was that about?" "I have no idea," said Harry. His pulse quickened and he raised the snitch in his fingers. "I wasn't going to try too hard in front of Scrimgeour, was I?" "What do you mean?" "The snitch I caught in my first ever Quidditch match. Don't you remember?" Hermione looked simply bemused. Ron, however, gasped, pointing frantically from Harry to the snitch and back again until he found his voice. "That was the one you nearly swallowed." "Exactly," said Harry, and with his heart beating fast, he pressed his mouth to the snitch. He did not open. Frustration and bitter disappointment welled up inside him. He lowered the golden sphere, but then Hermione cried out, "Rotting! There's rotting on it! Quick, look!" He nearly dropped the snitch in surprise and excitement. Hermione was quite right, and words upon the smooth golden surface where seconds before there had been nothing but 5 words, written in a thin, slanted handwriting that Howard recognized as Dumbledore's. "I open at the close." He had barely read them when the words vanished again. "I open at the close. What's that supposed to mean?" Hermione and Ron shook their heads, looking like, "I open at the close. At the close. I open at the close." But no matter how they often were able to repeat the words with many different inflections, they were unable to write any meaning from them. "In the sword," said Ron finally, when they had at last abandoned their attempts to divine meaning in the snitch's inscription. "Why did he want me to have the sword? And why couldn't he just have told me?" said Harry quietly. "I was there. It was right there on the wall of his office during all of our lost talks last year. If he wanted me to have it, why didn't he just give it to me then?" He felt as that he was sitting in an examination with a question he ought to have been able to answer in front of him, his brain slow and unresponsive. Was there something he had missed in the long talks with Dumbledore last year? Ought he know what it all meant? Had Dumbledore expected him to understand? And as for this book, said Hermione, the Tales of Beetle the Bard. I've never even heard of them. You've never heard of the Tales of the Beetle the Bard? Said Ron incredulously. You're kidding, Roy. No, I'm not, said Hermione. You're surprised. Do you know that? Of course I do. Harry looked up, diverted. The circumstance of Ron having read a book that Hermione was not presented. Ron, however, looked bemused by their surprise. Oh, come on. All the old kids' stories are supposed to be Beatles, aren't they? The Fountain of the Fortune, the Wizard and the Hopping Boy, Babbity Rabbity and her Crackling Stomp. Excuse me, said Hermione. What was that last one? Come off it, said Ron, looking in disbelief from Hermione. You must have heard of Babbity Rabbity. Ron, you know full well Harry and I were brought by muggles, said Hermione. We didn't hear stories like that when we were little. We heard Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Cinderella. What's that, an end of illness? Asked Ron. So these are children's stories? Asked Hermione, bending against over the runes. Yeah, said Ron uncertainly. I mean, just what you hear, you know, from all those old stories came from Beetle. I don't know what they're like in the original versions. But I wonder why Dumbledore thought I should read them. Something cracked downstairs. Probably just Charlie, now Mom's asleep, sneaking off to regrow his hair, said Ron nervously. All the same, we should get to bed, whispered Hermione. It wouldn't do to oversleep tomorrow. No, agreed Ron. A pretty triple murder by the bridegroom's mother might be put a little damper on the wedding. I'll get the light. And he clicked the illuminator once more as Hermione left the room. End of chapter 7. Wow, what a journey. What a phenomenal journey. What a phenomenal audiobook experience.